Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's enjoying the conference so far. My name is Daniel Asper, and I'm head of partnerships at Shopify Gaming. We're super excited to be here chatting with you guys. It's really one of the first opportunities we're getting to speak to a larger group of developers and publishers and marketing people and business people in the gaming industry. So really excited to share what Shopify has done in the gaming space today. Want to talk about three main things today. The first is explaining, what is Shopify Gaming and how is it related to the Shopify core commerce platform. The second is what problem are we really helping game developers solve in the industry and it, in the gaming industry at large. And then third, going to bring up Eli Simet, who is here. He's lead producer of Toronto-based Snowman, and Eli's going to talk about how he integrated the Shopify Gaming product into Altos Adventure to help them solve a problem. And he's going to walk us through a live demo at the end. So about 30 minutes of material, and then we'll be around for a Q&A afterwards. Just want to start off here with a quick personal story. So everyone knows what these are. These are Mario plushies. But for me, growing up in the 90s, these meant a lot more to me. And I spent a lot of time with these characters, basically playing N64 on evenings and weekends with my friends. And I remember very specifically one moment in time when my dad gave me $20 and he told me to run up to the corner store and get him a carton of eggs. And so I take the $20 and I get on my bike and I ride up to the corner store. I grab the eggs, and as I'm bringing them to the front, I look to my right and I see these. And that day I ended up spending $3 on eggs and $17 on Mario plushies. And so, safe to say my father was not pleased, but looking back, that really represents the moment in time that I realized the power that Nintendo as a brand had to unlock a value for me as a player and a customer to seemingly reach into their digital world, their game world, and pull something out into reality. And that's really what we want to talk about today, is how Shopify Gaming is helping empower all game developers to have the power that Nintendo has had for years. And so the theme for today is going to be bringing your digital world to real life. So just want to take a quick step back and talk about what is Shopify before we get into it. So most of you in the audience might know Shopify is the easiest way to get set up selling online for your business. And that was true up until a couple years ago. But really, the company has evolved into a lot more than that. We are the largest multi-channel commerce platform in the world. Really what this means is we're the back-end operating system that sits behind a business, helping entrepreneurs power anything you really need to get set up and run a retail business. And so what that looks like in a diagram to sort of simplify things is this. So we help you simplify your web hosting, web design, product sourcing, marketing, payments, shipping and fulfillment, all the things that make starting and running a business more complex, we try to simplify. So with that, how does this lead into the gaming world? And what is Shopify Gaming? I think it's helpful to now look at this diagram, how we help merchants not just sell through a stagnant online store, but really empower you to reach your customers and audience where they're spending their time. Whether that's selling in person through point of sale, through social media like Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, or through some of the world's largest marketplaces like eBay and Amazon. We really want to empower you as a Shopify merchant to host your products on our back end, but be able to sell through the platforms where your customers are spending their time. And if we think about game developers as entrepreneurs, we've now released SDKs and products that allow you to sell your physical merchandise directly in your games and directly in these VR, AR experiences. And so that's really what the Shopify Gaming products are and what we're going to talk about more today. Our core mission is to help game developers bring their digital worlds to real life through commerce. So enough of me sort of talking about these things. Let's take a look at how some developers are doing this today. So as you can see, we've made it really easy to integrate physical products and physical merchandise directly into the gameplay experience. These checkouts happen natively in the game, and so beating a boss and unlocking a patch and unlocking a series of patches as you progress through a game can be a really powerful player engagement tool, we think, and also a brand new way for you as a game developer to make more money. And so we're not just operating in the gaming industry, we also empower VR and AR developers to power similar experiences. And so here's something that our virtual reality team developed using the Robo Recall mod, and we call this Robo Retail. So for anyone who's played Robo Recall, really cool experience, and both, on, for example, mobile and VR, really easy to power the checkout of these physical products using things like Apple Pay and your Oculus account. So we can make this process really seamless for the end player. The two tools we have publicly available to allow these native physical in-app purchases are Shopify Buy SDKs for Unity and Buy SDKs for custom engines built in C++. So these are publicly available today for developers to pick up and use and start integrating physical merchandise into your games. So this is all really cool to see, but just want to talk a little bit about the opportunity we see for game developers and the problem that we're really solving, and specifically going to focus on the mobile space today. And so if we look up here, we can kind of see the composition of how mobile game monetization works in 2017. There's kind of two ways that you make money as a mobile game developer. One is through direct revenue streams, and the second is indirect. So looking at the direct market, globally this is about a $50 billion market. And it's composed of three main things. So you have your paid and premium games, which make up 4% of the market. So this goes to show that there's not really a high willingness to spend right now in mobile, paying upfront to purchase games. Ads. So ads are 53% of this $5 billion market. This is reward-based ads, banner ads. Now, they're a great way to broadly monetize a user base, but I think we would all agree that ads aren't the first thing we would go to for a better value driver experience for a player. So we don't want to have to resort to ads, but sometimes they're a necessary evil to be able to offer our games for free. That brings us to digital in-app purchasing. And so digital in-app purchases make up 43% of the market today. And this is really the main mechanism that mobile developers have to drive in-game value for players. So 99 cents for an extra life, $3.99 for gems to expedite the building of your base. These are things that drive value for the in-game experience. But what's really surprising about this 43% number is that only 5% of players are actually contributing to it. So think about that. Only 5% of mobile players actually spend money on digital in-app purchases, yet they make up 43% of the overall industry, or $22 billion. And so what's even crazier is to look at this on a graph. So this tiny sliver of 5% of players are the only folks who see enough value in a game to actually spend money in it. And if we were to think about this as an entrepreneur, it's not necessarily how we maximize spend from this 5%. It's more, how do we unlock the 95% who aren't seeing enough value to spend money in our games? And that's how we really want to approach this problem. And so Shopify Gaming is trying to help developers drive more value for this 95%. How can you unlock more value for your players and your user base? And one hypothesis we have, as we've alluded to, is in-game merchandise. So this is a picture of GameStop today. GameStop did not look like this when I was a kid. So GameStop recently announced a strategy to redesign a whole chunk of their stores to be 50% merch and collectibles. Their fastest growing segment is merchandise, not games. This is going to be $1 billion industry or $1 billion line of business for GameStop in 2019. And so, they're really focusing on this, serving this insatiable demand for merch in the game player space. And we really think that this is something that game developers themselves can start to take advantage of, using things like our Shopify Gaming products. But enough of me telling you about that. Now I'd like to bring up Eli, who's going to walk you through a demo and a project that we worked on together with Alto's Adventure.
Thanks, man. Hey everybody, so my name's Eli Samet, as he said and the screen says. I'm the lead producer over at Snowman. We're a small studio based out of Toronto, and we were getting to that size recently where we sort of decided we needed to come up with a mission statement. We're not just 2 people in a room anymore, we're about 7 or 8 people. So we sort of took a step back and looked at what we've made, what we plan on making, and what sort of sits at the heart of all of that. And we came up with what we think is kind of the Snowman motto. And we like to say that Snowman is a small studio at the center of artful experiences. And what that really means beyond the jargon is that we like making things that our players might sit with for a very short time, but that sit with them for a long time after and linger in their hearts and their minds and kind of follow them across the most personal devices they own. So if we're going back to the numbers stuff that Dan was talking about, we actually kind of burrow in and spend our whole time living in that seemingly abandoned 4% space of making paid premium games on mobile devices. And so the game that most people know us for in that space is a game called Alto's Adventure. So we made a game in 2015 in collaboration with UK artist, developer, and designer Harry Nesbitt, and released it onto the App Store. And the thesis for Alto's Adventure was, for us, much more about exploring a feeling than it was about tapping into a specific genre. So our co-founders, Ryan and Jordan, grew up snowboarding together, loved escaping to nature and getting outside the city to sort of just have a moment of peace. And they didn't see on the App Store, reflected in the games that they wanted to play, that sense of capturing a feeling. They saw in games like the Endless Runner genre a much more frenetic, high score-driven, kind of like player battle type experience where you were always kind of just fighting to be the best. What we wanted to do was distill that down to a sense of calm and peacefulness. And so, along with Harry, we designed a universe meant to kind of capture that, about a young farm boy named Alto, who you see pictured there kind of towards the end, sitting next to our lovely llama Felipe, who, as much as he loves his mountain home, he's a bit airheaded, and he lets his llamas escape down the hill a little bit too much. And so your job is to go wrangle them up, capture them, and bring them back. And along the way, we hoped enjoy the scenery, the music, and have that sort of peaceful meditativeness that you might be missing from your every day. And so we released Alto on the App Store in February of 2015, and we were surprised by a lot. We were floored by its success. We were very fortunate to be in a position where we could sit back and sort of stop and breathe before our next project. But more than anything, I think we were floored by player reaction to Alto. We had players emailing us and telling us that for them, Alto was what they needed to help get them through a really hard crisis moment of PTSD, something we never could have imagined designing for when we made the game. We had players interpreting our characters and creating fan art from them that gave the game a level of personality that not even we planned for when we designed it. And what this really taught us more than anything was that for Alto players, Alto was more than just a game that they played, but a place that they went for a little bit of time each day. And so for us, we had a couple of sort of avenues we could pursue at this point, as I say, makers of those premium, artful mobile experiences. I'm kind of killing some time by letting Alto linger on the screen so it can be a place you guys go for a little bit as well. So first and foremost, of course, we're a tiny team, right? So we're fixing bugs. We're making sure Alto's working. We're addressing any issues that players are noticing. And from there, we're kind of taking a step back and thinking what might be next for Alto and his friends. And we've made that decision now. We've already announced that coming soon is a new adventure for Alto and his friends, Alto's Odyssey, which will be bringing him to a desert space that's a little bit different, a little bit more exciting and adventurous. And beyond getting to work on a new project or setting to work on fixing bugs, a big core component of what we felt we could do with Alto was merchandise. And we had a lot of what I like to call anecdata telling us that this was the right thing to do. Players were emailing us saying, oh, I'd really want to buy Alto's toque, or I would really kill to wear an Alto shirt. But as a tiny team, we didn't really have the resources to do it right away. So when push came to shove, we were finally able to stop, breathe, and sit down to formulate an Alto merchandise collection about a year and a half after the game launched, in summer of 2016. And what we ended up coming up with was a sort of principal structure around what we ended up calling the Alto Collection. So a couple of core components for the Alto Collection were sort of similar to what we had when we made the game. We wanted to make merchandise that players felt was as high quality as the game that they played itself. So not that it's the wrong approach for everybody, but for us, tchotchkes like, mugs and keychains were out of the question. So that's one thing. We knew we were going to be investing a little bit more upfront in our merchandise. Another thing was that we wanted to make players feel like the merchandise was made in the world of Alto. So anything you bought should feel like it came directly from the little villages you see as you careen down the mountain. And what this ended up meaning was that we crafted a series of winter-friendly items. Like you see there, we worked with our designer and artist Harry to create a toque modeled after Alto's toque and have it handcrafted with alpaca fur in Peru, ethically through a non-government organization. We contacted an expert needle felter in Germany and had them craft 100 limited edition llamas that feel like they came from the game itself. And all of that was sort of spearheaded towards a winter launch of the Alto collection, timed with the wintry theme of the game. And when it came out, like with the game, we were blown away in a couple of good ways, but also kind of a couple of bad ones. We were really floored and, buoyed up by the support we saw from our players who took pictures with our socks and said, oh, I bought one of your art prints, or look at this amazing toque I'm wearing. And during the holiday season, we sold a fair bit of merchandise capitalizing on the fact that it was wintertime and people were buying holiday gifts for their loved ones. But I talked a couple slides ago about this idea of anecdata, right? Players telling you something and then maybe not measuring it as well as you could. And that's something we really ran up against with merchandise, was this idea that for as much as players were telling us they wanted to buy something based on our game universe, the fact that they had to go to an online store to do it, and then maybe stop and think about whether they wanted to spend $18 on a sock, or that level of love they had for the game was a little faded by the time they got to the point of purchase. And for us, that meant that after the peak holiday season, we kind of saw our merch sales trickle off, and if I'm being honest, nearly die. 1, 2, 3 merchandise sales a week, to the point where, while we were willing to call it a good experiment in service of our players, it was, in our minds, kind of going to be just that. A lost leader. Merchandise didn't succeed the way we wanted it to. We'll keep it ticking in the background, but we'll learn for future. And this is where the team at Shopify really kind of, energized and put a little bit of life into the product. They came to us with an idea, to be the first to market with a new Unity SDK that they were concocting. And together with them, we crafted what you're now seeing on screen, which is the Alto's Adventure gift shop. So we already had a workshop in game where players were used to going to buy digital merchandise with soft currency. Like I said, we're a premium game, so we don't charge you any money for the coins in our game. You earn them only through play, and you go to buy things that give you extra lives or make sure you're upgrading your wingsuit. But while you're there, we thought, why not direct your attention to the gift shop, which, like the workshop, was styled in the same grid-style format, but through a simple series of touches would allow you to inspect our merchandise, look at it, add it to your cart, and check out in one touch through Apple Pay. And what we found after launching this in July of 2017, after kind of spelunking away on it, getting it up and running, inside of a week, I might add, really, really quickly, but wanting to make sure the launch had as much impact as we could, was pretty astounding. So these are just data points and you can look at them, but I'll talk more meaningfully to me for what happened. So first and foremost, we doubled the sales of the entire 2016 run of our merch in the first 60 days of this integration being available to players with no marketing whatsoever. Because for many players, what we weren't realizing was that while they might love Alto, they don't use social media. So they're not Twitter users, they're not Facebook users. We thought, oh, this will be a cool way for players to, realize there's merch or discover there's merch again. But actually, in point of fact, it was for many players the first time they ever found out Alto had merchandise at all. And that was with no outreach whatsoever because they were already engaged, playing, and inside the world of Alto. So that was really meaningful for us. Another thing is, really important to note is that now, on a daily basis, 75% of all of our merchandise sales, which are significantly heightened from when we first launched the collection, come from inside our game products across all platforms, specifically heavily weighted towards the App Store, where players are able to check out entirely in one tap through Apple Pay. So every time a new little ding comes in my Shopify store, I'm pretty delighted to find out that I go into the analytics and see that it's through our Apple integration on iOS in one touch. And this is this idea that I talked about before, where players might be dropping off thinking that maybe they don't want to buy an $18 sock. Now they're engaged in a great run they just had. They're thinking about Felipe, the lovely llama who they like playing around with, and they're maybe going to buy a sock right there and then, just after they've bought something from the workshop, almost without thinking about it, but in some ways because they're so overjoyed to be in the world of Alto. As I said, we're makers of premium content with the goal of adding smiles and a little bit of joy and value to people's lives. We're not here to trick you into buying something from us. We want you to do it because you love the experience. And what this has allowed us to do is contact our players at the point when they're having the best time in our game. And perhaps the most startling fact of all is this last one here, which is that for our players, the average cart size in a premium mobile game is $40. So this means that players who've already spent $5 on an app, which is pretty high on the scale for premium apps these days, are willing to spend as much as $40 on what ostensibly amount to in-app purchases. And so this tells me that there's a whole new category of players out there that aren't served by digital IAPs, as they're called, that are willing and looking for something that engages them more and has value to their lives. And, so the overall takeaway here is this quote I like from Arthur C. Clarke, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And so for players, being ensconced in this sort of space of safety and joy as they play Alto, and then going to a place where they can, in one touch, have a sock from the game they love arrive at their house in 2 weeks and hold it in their hands, is meaningful in a way that I think goes beyond jargon and the idea of whales. I'm not really interested in that as a maker of games. I'm interested in adding value to players' lives, and for me, this is another way that we can do so without having to layer on some of those lower value drivers that Dan was talking about, like ads and IAPs, and still carve out a niche in what I think is a very healthy premium mobile space today. So with that, I'm going to sort of pass back to Dan to talk a little more about what they envision the future of this space as well.
Thanks, Eli. Super cool story. I love the story of not advertising the merch at all, letting your game and the new update do all the talking for you. So players were discovering this organically, and some of them, if you don't mind me sharing, were buying 3 prints at a time to the tune of close to $300 on in-app purchases, which is pretty crazy and amazing because it was the first time that they even knew this stuff existed. So just to kind of go back to what the future that we're kind of talking about here is, we're really introducing physical in-app purchases. To sort of go back to the seamless experience we can help developers create, it's with the $29 a month Shopify plan, you can have this branded website, but also at no extra cost, put your products in the experience where your players are most engaged. And that's the real value in this. And physical in-app purchasing is really, as a result of this project, now becoming a real thing in the industry. And so, want to dispel one last myth. You don't need a 6-foot life-size Iron Man like you saw in the GameStop picture to do this. Through the Shopify platform, you can get branded merchandise actually at no extra overhead cost using print-on-demand integrations. And so these are also free to use. For anyone using the Shopify platform. So we're really also trying to democratize the actual creation of merch for game developers to get up and running. And so in one visual, this is really what we're talking about. The overall merchandise market in the US is $13 billion for gaming merchandise and collectibles. And we're really just saying this doesn't have to be a complex secondary revenue stream anymore. We can make it directly part of the game and easy for players to discover and enjoy. And so if there's anything we've learned at Shopify over the past few years, it's the closer the point of purchase is to the point of engagement, the more likely people are to buy. And that's exactly what Eli's talking about being immersed in this gameplay experience, discovering goods that feel like they're built right in the Altos adventure world, and being able to pull them out into real life. And that's really what we're trying to empower game developers to do today. So thank you so much for listening to us. This is the Shopify gaming team. We're going to be around for the next couple days. Happy to take any questions now, or feel free to come find us over the next few days of the conference. We'd love to chat. Thanks.